developer conference. I love the kind of marrying of all these different topics and like seeing all these folks in person, both people I've met on the internet and real life. It's a super energizing place to be.
Well, this is actually my first time at Universe. It has been awesome. Not only the event and how it looks and feels, but the people and the energy, like everybody's really excited to do really nerdy things. And that's kind of my favorite thing.
The community is really great. There's all different types of people. Everyone obviously really loves the GitHub platform. And we're all here for essentially just making ourselves better and more productive.
I came here, I got open source, and I got a fresh new deck. I'm loving it. It's great. It's fantastic.
The conversation, the number of different topics that you can talk to people about. We literally just had a question and we're talking to some of the GitHub experts about it and solve a problem we've been working on.
Seeing the vibrancy of the community, the colors, even just how things are portrayed and the little gifts that have a programmable name tag. I love all these quirky little things. It speaks to the community of just how nerdy, but also fun and interactive. And I think it's a really just cool vibe to be around.
I've spoken at many conferences at this point, and most of them are more corporate driven and quite a bit just louder, frankly. But here I've made friends with many people. Everyone feels approachable and I feel approachable too. And I've really enjoyed that experience so far.
We believe that every developer can be an AI developer with the right tools and training. That's why we've launched GitHub Models on the GitHub Marketplace, a place for you to explore and experiment with a hand-picked collection of top models with entitlements attached to your GitHub account. So let's try out one of the newest models, GPT-4o. We can pass in an initial user prompt to interact with the model, and we can use the playground to adjust the parameters. For example, we can change the system prompt and experiment with the temperature for more or less randomness. Now that we've adjusted the parameters, we can send user prompts to interact with the model, simulating its use for our application. Now GPT-4o looks great, but I want to test how a different and smaller model handles this scenario. So let's switch to Phi3 Mini Instruct and evaluate its response. Looks good. Now we can also navigate to the details page to find out more information about the model through the README, evaluation, and transparency tabs. Now I've made my decision and I want to start using the models with code. By clicking the code button, we get access to some getting started instructions. We can even use a GitHub Codespace to create a pre-configured development environment, ready with SDKs and some samples. Now the model API calls use the entitlements that come with my GitHub account. And because the Codespace knows who I am, I don't have to add an API key or sign up to any other services to start experimenting in code. Talking about experimenting, let's update the streaming sample to use Phi3 Mini 4K Instruct. We'll also update the prompt and continue with our experiments. Now those entitlements we mentioned earlier follow you wherever you're logged in, including the GitHub CLI. Here, we're calling AI models to create questions for first-year computer science students so they can check their knowledge of Git. But we can even combine other CLI commands with the GitHub CLI. For example, let's summarize the last 10 commits of this repository using Phi3 Mini Instruct. GitHub Models helps minimize the friction as you explore and experiment with AI models. So take your first steps in building AI-powered apps by joining the waitlist for GitHub Models. We can't wait to see what you build next.
Hi, everyone. I am Kedasha, and welcome to Open Source Friday, the show where we talk to maintainers about the apps that they're maintaining. I am so excited about today's episode. Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to the stream. Today, we're talking to the GitHub CLI team. We have Andy Feller and William Martin here to chat to us all about all things GitHub CLI. I personally love the CLI because it makes using and interacting with GitHub a lot bit easier. So I'm super excited to learn about what the team has been working on, what's changed, what's coming, and a lot more insider tips. So without further ado, welcome Andy and William. Hi.
Yeah, good morning. It's nice to meet you. Good to be on the show.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's good afternoon here. But yeah, nice to be here.
Yes. Good afternoon, good day, good evening, good night, everyone. Welcome. I know my energy changes once I get live. I tend to I tend to bring the DevRel to the DevRel situation. Okay, cool. So Andy, William, tell us about yourselves. Let's start with William. Where are you from? What do you do at GitHub? How long have you been doing it? All that jazz.
Sure. I'm from Northern Ireland. You could probably see somewhere here there's a flag, football flag. But I live in Amsterdam in the Netherlands now. I've been at GitHub for a bit more than 2 years. And for the last year, I've been working on the GitHub CLI.
Nice. Welcome. Nice to have you. And Andy?
Here in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina. I've been at GitHub for about 3 years. Started my tenure in our professional services, expert services, and I've been on the GitHub CLI team for the past year.
Wow. So the GitHub CLI, right? Welcome to the stream. Happy to have you. I know the last time we had a GitHub CLI stream was about like 3 or 4 years ago. I know personally that a lot has changed with the CLI. So kind of tell us about the GitHub CLI. What is it? How do we use it? And let's start there.
Andy, do you want to field this one or shall I?
Take the first stab and I'll follow.
All right, sure. Yeah, so I mean, well, GitHub CLI. I guess for people who are listening in, probably a lot of developers here, the terminal should feel like a familiar place. And the GitHub CLI was created around 4 years ago. I think the last time someone was on the stream, it was Mislav, who was the OG, the original maintainer of the GitHub CLI. But actually before that, he was maintainer of a tool called Hub. And that's really where GitHub in the CLI started. It was a sort of semi-official CLI tool wrapping Git and bringing some of those concepts from GitHub, like issues and pull requests, to where developers are already working. But over time, they were feeling some friction there. And so he and GitHub decided to invest in a fully official tool, which is GH. And the goal there is to take all those concepts, all those GitHub primitives that everyone works with every day in the browser, and to bring them into the terminal, to put them at people's fingertips, and to make use of some of the context that's already on the computer that you're working on that is available to Git itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's quite the story. I don't think I've ever heard about the hub before. But that's very interesting.
Yeah, like really the Hub was built as how can we make working with Git easier? Because at the time there's a lot of kind of esoteric error messages and use cases, and so that kind of effort started for 10 years, and then kind of realizing that people really wanted to build their GitHub experiences and not really like working around Git. And I think that's kind of shown in the kind of foundation the GitHub CLI provides, where we provide your access to these primitives, your ability to build kind of on top of that to build your own experiences, whether it's in the terminal or it's through automation. So I certainly love the GitHub CLI ever since I first kind of encountered it because of that.
Nice. So the GitHub CLI provides a way for developers who love to customize things to kind of customize their own interaction with GitHub. That's what I'm hearing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really one of our big focus points is like, how do we, there's github.com, which is a fantastic experience in the browser, but unless you really get into doing Chrome extensions or any kind of browser extensions, building your own custom experiences is challenging. So, for developers who are already comfortable in the terminal, already might know how to work with a lot of commands, already have tools in their tool belt that they like to work with, or for other reasons like perhaps accessibility related reasons, that being able to customize those experiences exactly the way they want really can be quite rewarding and provide a lot of sort of power tools.
Nice. So show us the CLI.
Sure.
How do we get started with it? How do we use it? What is its capabilities? All that jazz. Take it away.
Okay. Wow. There was a lot of questions. How do we get started? Well, it depends. The best place to start is probably at github.com/CLI. So this is the open source repository for the GitHub CLI. And from there, you can find various instructions. You can jump over to our documentation, where you may find some installation instructions here. And you can also find a user's manual here. But in terms of how you actually get it installed, there are a lot of installation instructions in this README. And it depends where you're coming from. If you're on a Mac, maybe you will be familiar with Homebrew. If you're using Red Hat or Ubuntu, we have package repositories. If you're on Windows, well, there's a whole bunch of options as well. So it's up to you. Some of them are officially supported, some of them are semi-official, and many of them are community managed.
Yep, just wherever you're at, right? If it's your workstation, if it's a container, if it's a VM, if it's in a public cloud, like GitHub CLI could be anywhere you need it to be.
Nice.
And it's already in Actions. That's an important one. So
yep, already ready.
Yeah, one of the big usages of the CLI is customizing workflows in GitHub Actions, and it's already available there, already installed in the runners. Now you said the next question was how do you use it, right? Or
yes, how do you
get started? Yeah, so there's probably the most common way people get started is they run gh-auth login. Should I bump up the font size here? It looks
yes,
like it might be a
please.
little small. Yeah, gh-auth login.
Yes.
So this will provide an interactive flow, which will allow you to sort of open a browser, and in the background, we will authenticate the CLI so that it can work with whatever resources you have permission to. There are other ways to authenticate by bringing your own personal access tokens, or again, with actions when workflows start, they are already injected with a token that the CLI can use. So those are sort of all the ways that you can authenticate. I've already done that. I don't want to go through it because it's going to be a whole browser-based flow. But once you've done that, then there are many commands at your fingertips, which you can see just by running gh. So we've got sort of sets of core commands relating to those sort of primitives that you should probably already know and love, like gists, issues, PRs, project, and so on. And then there are some more less used functionalities around actions, running new workflows. And there's a lot. I don't want to go into it. Otherwise, I will just list so many commands. There are some extension opportunities I'm going to talk about in a bit, but maybe we can come back to that with a more focused question.
So I have a question about the GitHub Actions commands.
Yes.
With the gh workflow command or even the gh run command, are we able to see our actions in our terminal?
Yeah, so like right now I'm in like my terminal is in the CLI clone. Like I've cloned the CLI repository, and that's the directory we're in. And so if we were to say do gh workflow, well, let's see what we get. We got listing of workflows. These are all the workflows that are currently available. And then we could say, let's see, what should we do, Andy? Any ideas? What's the best way to demonstrate actions?
Do you want to trigger a release?
No, I don't. We could do we could
So
do
I'd say, let's look at the latest, the latest actions that were kind of kicked off.
Yeah, so here I ran GH run list, and we've been given this sort of table output of all the most recent workflow runs.
Nice.
Probably if we grab this ID and we say run view, provide that, we'll get some more details about that particular run. We can see that this one had an interesting error. But yeah, so now we're the all of the we can get the logs, we can re-trigger failed jobs. There's lots of things we can do to work with actions in the CLI.
Nice.
Yeah. So for example, if you want to kind of, narrow in on, show me workflow runs that have failed, and maybe you want to kind of follow up on them, or maybe you want to re-trigger them because there are kind of ways to re-trigger those, or maybe you want to trigger alerts. Like that's kind of, I guess, like if you want like more specific ways I would use like run list, for example.
Yeah, so like Andy said, maybe we want to find ones that are failed. Hopefully this works. Yeah, so here's all our recently failed jobs. Just bypassing the -- status failed flag.
I mean, that's actually very useful.
And maybe also one other thing here, right? Well, if you don't mind just running GH run list plain. Something that's not a failure, but maybe it's kind of problematic is, why are some of these workflows like taking so long? So like this can also be kind of a good indicator of like, this is really slow. We should really go investigate it because, a dev is sitting waiting for like this to complete. Like, and I can tell you like for some of these, like some of our Windows builds are actually kind of slower. So, that's something that, we've noticed we kind of need to improve, but like, that's how you can really kind of dig into these details, look at the jobs, see how long they take, and kind of just triage things and hopefully improve it.
Nice. Very useful.
Yeah. So that's sort of like an introduction to the commands. I think we mentioned at the start that, maybe I'm really running with an idea here. I mentioned at the start that when we were introducing the CLI, that one of the big things that we care about is allowing people to build customizable experiences. So I thought it might be interesting to do a little demo of like maybe something that would be a common maintainer workflow. Do you think that would be interesting?
Please. Yes, please.
Right. So I would think by far the most commonly used command in the GitHub CLI relates to working with pull requests. So there's a GHPR command. Right. As a maintainer on the CLI, often I care about reviewing pull requests that come in that are awaiting a review from me. So there's the GHPR list command, right? And this allows us to just list all open PRs that are ready for review or in draft state. But we can narrow that down, right? We can start building a bit more customizability onto it by saying, I only want to search for places where my review has been requested. And I'm sorry to anyone who's been waiting 6 months for my review. So that's a bit embarrassing. But yeah, now I'm saying, okay, now I've got a list of PRs that are awaiting my review. But we can go further than that, right? We can start to build more custom output on top of it so that further scripting can be done. So for example, I could say, well, I don't want that entire table. I only want the PR number and the PR title. And so I can pass this --JSON flag to provide a structured output, like so. But this could be consumed easily in other tools. But I do really want a table. I don't want the JSON output. So what I really want to say is something like using, this is a templating language.
Go templating syntax.
Yeah. And you can find more information about this if you run GH formatting. So it's not that important to understand exactly what I'm doing here right now. But what I'm doing is saying for all of those JSON results, I want to create a table out of them with a single row per option or per result, right? So now we can see we've kind of got this table structure back. So every morning I could come in and I could run this and see, well, what issues or what PRs are waiting for my review. But I don't want to write that every single
time.
Yeah, right. So much like shells or like Git, GH has the ability to have aliases. So I can say set an alias. Let's see, what shall I call it? Wait for me, right? Things that are waiting for me, right? And I'd say when I run GH wait for me, I want this command to run. I'm missing a quote. Has someone help me? Oh, here we go. Single quote. Okay, now we've created this alias. We've added this alias wait for me, and if I run that, I should get my table output. Right.
I love
But
that.
then
I'm definitely going to use that.
That's great. Yeah. So there are people out there, and you can find them on like issues. They've curated a big set of aliases which they use to support their daily workflows. And what we can do is we can take this, and then since we're already developers and we're in the terminal, we can put it into other tooling to make even richer experiences. So, for example, there's a tool called FCF, which is it's called a fuzzy finder, and it allows you to search by text, just searching text and fuzzy finding on that text. But it's got a really rich experience as well. So based on the selection you've made, you can choose to show a preview. So what we can do, and this is something that I've come across, I didn't come up with this. I've seen our community create, leave comments about their workflows, which I find absolutely amazing. And this is one that I saw earlier today, where they can say, well, whenever I'm looking at a particular item, I want to get a preview using the GHPR view command here. So this might look like a bit of a incantation, but we're taking that table output from PR list, and we're sending it into this other tool, FCF, and whichever PR we're interested in, we're going to go call GHPR view, which is just another command to view a particular PR. And so now we get this rich experience where I can move up and down on the left side, and on the right side, we're getting a summary of the PR.
Nice.
We can go even further than that, right? We can say, I also want to bind I want to say whenever I hit the C character on my keyboard, that we're going to run GHPR checkout. So now if I'm looking at a PR, I'm thinking, okay, I'm ready to review this particular PR. Let's say I want to review this one that's been waiting for a while for me, and I hit C on my keyboard, then that's gone off and should be running GHPR checkout. And yeah, now we can see that we've checked out the PR branch that was has all the commits from our contributor. And GHPR checkout is really, I lost my terminal. GHPR checkout is really a number one open source maintainer tool that I know of, because it can be quite tricky for maintainers when contributors come along and they forked your repository and they're trying to contribute back to run all the Git and the necessary Git incantations to get your local repository in the right place. GHPR checkout handles that all for you, and that's really nice. And of course, we could go ahead and alias this whole thing as well, so that I just have to run like GH review. In fact, I think I have that somewhere. I can just copy it in so. And if I run GH reviews, then it's all done for me. And that's really nice, because that gives me this entirely customizable experience that I couldn't have had in the browser.
That's amazing, and it makes me feel like I've been using GitHub wrong all these years. This is like a power user tip. This is so good, William. So good.
I hope that people watching learn something from this, and I would love to hear from people if they come up with amazing and clever ways to use the GitHub CLI like this to build rich experiences. Oh, sorry, I didn't even finish. One more thing, and maybe Andy will want to talk about this in a bit more detail, because I know he loves this. But even beyond these sort of scripts that you can build, the GitHub CLI has this entire extension ecosystem where third parties or GitHub can come and build fully featured tooling, and it can be managed, installed, and executed through the GitHub CLI. And so, for example, there's an amazing one called GH Dash, which stands for dashboard. Maybe we can find the link and put it in stream at some point. And it kind of does this, like exactly what I just wrote my little script for. It does it in a much more fully featured form. And here you can see this whole terminal user experience that someone else built and maintains. It's easy to just install through the CLI. Yeah, sorry. Hope that was interesting.
The GH extension is so good because it's literally a dashboard for you to see like all the things, and it's so interactive and it's so beautiful.
Super customizable. It's really, really neat.
Yeah, but go back to like a point that you kind of like touched on earlier, like Will, like, you know, we have lots of different users with the GitHub CLI, and I think one thing that we kind of discovered is that we have users with like low vision or who are blind, where the terminal is really kind of like the best experience that they can have, you know, like, you know, versus like screen reading in a web browser where there's a lot of things going on. And I think, you know, Will and I kind of had some opportunities in the past year to really kind of connect with you know, some individuals who like this is their kind of living experience, and so like having that connection and appreciation of allowing different users to have as rich of an experience or as accessible an experience is something, you know, like is really kind of driven home for us, and something that, you know, when we look at what we're doing next, you know, accessibility and helping people build that experience that they need matters even more than ever.
That's so true. And I think that's also why community contributions are so amazing, and why I'm so happy that the GitHub CLI is open source, because then we can take all the brain power from our amazing dev community to make amazing tools like GH Dash, right? So that people can work in their terminal if they prefer to, but also like continue doing their work in their terminal on GitHub without like missing a beat. That's a really great point, Andy. Such a good point, the accessibility feature. So I have a question for you before we kind of move on a little bit. What would you say are some of the biggest challenges users face when they're adopting the GitHub CLI, and how do you think the team addresses them?
I'm going to let Andy field that one.
The biggest challenges when adopting the GitHub CLI. A little bit of a, I guess maybe kind of a meta point is, you know, the GitHub CLI is kind of facilitating you integrating with GitHub through our APIs, whether it's REST or GraphQL. And we certainly make those experiences better, easier. There's a lot of kind of intelligence that's built into how we interact with our APIs. But I think like still there's like this big challenge of the GitHub CLI is still maybe kind of limited or impacted by either things that are missing or how the GitHub API behaves, whether it's, you know, the type of token you use and like what the rate limiting is around that. And if you need like larger rate limits, like this is where like you really need to use like a GitHub app with an installation access token, so you get larger like rate limits. But then there's certain like API endpoints that maybe don't behave the way that people need. So for example, we were talking about GH workflow and GH run. You know, there's a REST endpoint for triggering workflow runs, but it doesn't return the ID of the run back immediately. So this is kind of a limitation of GitHub's API, where users want to take that newly kicked off run and start watching it or do something with it. And we're kind of limited that way. We have another kind of endpoint for setting secrets. And the GitHub API will, if you want to update the value of the secret, but not everything else, you still have to tell that endpoint, here's all this information you have to give us, or we kind of reset it. So like there's some trickiness of the limitations of GitHub's API, and then, you know, how does it make sense in the kind of terminal user or the automation use case?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, well, like anything that you've kind of experienced.
Yeah, it's a tough question because there's, you know, such a breadth of usage of the CLI across different distributions, different use cases that well, when people come and create issues, they really run the gamut. But I think that Andy's sort of touching upon one of the most challenging points is how do we take this browser first platform and turn it into a CLI experience with the APIs that are available to us. That can sometimes be challenging because there's not always a clear mapping of command that the user is running to the functionality that the API supports. And so sometimes users can end up being a bit, we can lead them astray sometimes, and that can be kind of challenging. How we address that, I mean, in a lot of cases, it's coming up with better documentation, better, either in the CLI when you run GH help, or when you take all that and it's generated into our browser-based docs, or fixing our error messages. That's a big one that we have to deal with a lot, making things clearer. And so I think, for us, like the mirror of that challenge is as a small team that is maintaining what is effectively a horizontal product, because we're doing all of the GitHub products in the CLI, like we support PRs, issues, actions, releases, all of these things, is we don't necessarily have the team expertise, the deep expertise in those areas to understand all the use cases to fix those things up front. So there's kind of like two sides to that challenge for us and for our users.
Yeah. I mean, there's a ton of great work happening at GitHub all across our different kind of product areas. And given that, our team has kind of brought those experiences to the terminal, keeping up with everything that's going on and figuring out should it be kind of a one-to-one experience it's definitely a challenge of priorities of what's the most impactful, valuable thing for terminal users and automation. It's really hard to make a choice at times.
Yeah, I can see that. And that's one of the great challenges of managing a large open source project, right? There's never enough bandwidth, there's never enough manpower or man knowledge to handle man knowledge to handle all the different challenges that our community will have, which is why having it open source helps to solve some of those challenges and fill in some of those gaps. Because somebody will see the problem and they're like, oh, I can actually build that. They build it, make it an extension, and then everyone benefits from their hard work.
Yeah, and we've taken those extensions and we've pulled them in over time. We've taken that functionality that's been proved out by users and brought it in. So, for example, for a long time, you were only able to have one account. You were only able to log into one account on the CLI. And someone went off and they made an extension and they supported it for the community for years, so that people could be authenticated and switch between multiple accounts, say their work and their personal one. And once we had the bandwidth to do that, we were able to say, thank you so much for supporting the community. I want to call out this is GH profile was the extension. So kudos to the maintainer for that. And we're going to try and bring that natively into the CLI. It's been proved out. Thank you very much for your support. And hopefully you don't have to maintain this thing anymore. And so we love that. That's an amazing community interaction, I think.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a really good use case.
Yeah. And we also have a lot of other first party, GitHub product areas who test out some of their ideas, whether it's the actions team with the GH Actions cache, or it's the advanced security team who's built out the GHS bomb, or just other kind of capabilities around advanced security, giving them ways that they can test these experiences out, and then later on we can bring those back into the core. For example, GH project command was originally an extension that got merged in, or the recent GH attestation for the artifact attestation was formerly GH trust. So
interesting. What does GH attestation do?
So this kind of came public betaed and then GA'd over the past 3 to 6 months. But let's say you're a consumer of an artifact from a GitHub repository, and you want to actually be able to see how it was built and know that this was built based off of the workflows in the repository. Well, you can use this thing called artifact attestations that at the time of building your release, you can generate these signatures around those release artifacts, upload them to GitHub, and now when a user tries to download that artifact, they can actually ask GitHub, hey, I have this artifact. Can you tell me its provenance? How was it built? Where was it built? And so recently, the Homebrew community has actually been working with GitHub to leverage this. So when you install, packages from Brew, or install formulas, it can actually like verify that this was built using like the official processes, giving you a sense of trust of, like this actually came from the maintainers, like it's safe.
That was actually going to be one of my questions about the extensions. How do we know like which extensions are safe to use? Because like we're putting it on our machines, you know what I mean? And we're giving certain access and privileges to these extensions to execute functions on our behalf, right? So like, are there verified extensions? Is there like a list that we can go to say, okay, this is GitHub approved? What does that look like? Or is it like the attestation command that takes care of that for us? Oop, did I step into some mud?
No. This is a great question. And in all honesty, I think we hear from users and customers in like the broader, like when you look at our marketplace, right? Like, how do I look at a GitHub app? How do I look at a GitHub action? How do I look at a Copilot extension? Or how do I look at a CLI extension and trust it? And I think artifact attestation only gives you one like picture of where it was built. But do you look at its dependencies and say like, I understand the licenses it provides? Or do you actually want to look at the source code and say like, I understand what it's actually doing? And so I don't think we have like an official answer. I know this is something that does matter, and it's a broader challenge that I'm certainly hoping like our friends in package security or other areas are working on, because again, we hear it from customers for like anything kind of on the marketplace already. Yeah, like Will, like what are your thoughts?
Well, to answer your specific question, no, there's no such thing as like first party or verified extensions. We have talked about it before because there are a number of extensions that GitHub ships, and not only is there a sense of like the security that you talk about, but there's also a sense of like, hey, we want this to be associated as like an officially supported thing, and we want that to be conveyed through the CLI. So it's definitely something we're thinking about. But right now, like the real answer is, it's at if you install an extension, it's at your own risk.
Yeah.
If you do, anyone watching this, if you do that, you be aware of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely something to be tabled and figured out and prioritized, especially as we build out our marketplace, right? And we go into like models, like the age of AI. It's all about models and using these models. And I don't know, I think we have a responsibility there as GitHub to make sure that the tools and the extensions that our customers and users and maintainers are using is valid and it's safe.
Yeah. What we do have is
to some extent.
Like, when the extensions are installed, they are installed via Git. So, or at least a number of them. Andy could probably speak to this better. So there is a sense of like trust from the thing you're asking for is the thing you get. But beyond that, it's like, be careful.
That's true.
Yeah.
Andy.
Yeah. So for anybody who hasn't heard it before, Mike Hanley, one of our leaders here at GitHub over at engineering org always says, raise your hand if you're on the security team. And I always raise my hand because you're absolutely right. We want, users and our customers, our communities to feel like, they can focus on like building, like their products, their experiences. And yeah, like GitHub 100% cares about security in many different facets. So love the question. I definitely think it's worth a follow-up.
Yeah, it's a huge ask. It definitely is. And as we talk about extensions, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the extension of extensions that it seems like GitHub is leading into, the Copilot extensions, right? So the GitHub Copilot extension, I believe, was generally available back in March. Is it a March or like May? One of those M months.
Mhm.
And how is that going? How is that going?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you're absolutely right. So the Copilot CLI extension did publicly GA in March. It went public beta at Universe last year. And it was originally based on a technical preview that the GitHub Next team built. Um, you know, since we've released, we're definitely, we see interest from like users in our GH Copilot repo. Just kind of trying to figure out like what makes sense, to bring from like some of the broader kind of Copilot efforts, back to the Copilot CLI. Right now, one of the things that's kind of top of mind is like we want to improve our model. We kind of
Mm,
started with 3.5 Turbo. We hear from users who want Copilot CLI to be able to support their like their native language, or being able to support like multiple languages, or maybe tapping into some of the skills capabilities that we see with like our Copilot Business and Copilot Enterprise SKUs. So really kind of upgrading our model, and then I think there's kind of this interesting divide when we look at like the Copilot space. Like on one hand, we have how do we help developers in their editor write better code? And
mhm,
so I think in the CLI space, you do see like a lot of kind of tools that are focused on how can I help a user in a terminal like edit code? Where I think that's kind of do you use VS Code? Do you use NeoVim? Right, like there's tons of editors in that space, and I think with the Copilot CLI, like we're not trying to compete in that because like we're not like an editor. Whereas on the other side, once again, we see people, instead of going to Stack Overflow, like they're calling GH Copilot because they're looking for answers for things they're trying to generate, or like they're in a terminal and they're trying to remember how do I do this thing. Like for me, it's always like how do I use image magic to concatenate a whole bunch of images together, right?
mhm,
Um, but I think we're trying to look at like the GH models, or maybe some of the Copilot extensions, and trying to look at those other efforts, and then really kind of hear from our users of what makes sense for you working in the terminal, right?
mhm,
What kind of automation use cases do you have where AI can maybe help build on that process? And I think that's where I would love to see like discussions in the GitHub GH Copilot repo, kind of exploring those venues, because they're kind of untapped, I think, at this moment.
Yeah.
yeah. I'm thinking stewing. Yeah,
Yeah, me
yeah.
too. I mean, yeah, I mean, riffing off that, there's like, there are, what's really interesting is there are a lot of tools out there that are already looking at this space, like being, working in the similar terminal LLM AI suggestion space. And, the AI is so hot right now that there's,
Yes.
it's so much happening. And I think, we went GA in March or May. I'm not exactly sure. You said the M month. I don't know. And
March.
so we're sort of thinking like, okay, well, what do we want to do next, right? What is our next big step here? Because
Mhm,
in the terminal, people sort of expect to have like a stable experience that they can build upon. And so some of the, like, we want to be very careful and very intentional about the AI capabilities that we bring into people's terminals, not just in the terminals, but also like on their machines with all their stuff. And so like, we're just being very sort of taking this a bit slow, being very circumspect about the capabilities that we want to bring from Copilot into like products that we support in the terminal. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, I'm just trying to like,
Yeah, 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 so like for example, I think one of the big questions we asked early on in development was, well, how much context about your terminal, your operating system, like where you are in the terminal, should we provide to Copilot to generate suggestions? And we went on the like the far conservative side of like we're not going to take any context. But then, like in starting to get feedback, we see like, well, I would really love the suggestion to recognize I'm on Windows or I'm in like
Mm,
command prompt or I'm in PowerShell. Um, and so, we're trying, as we'll say, we're trying to be intentional about like not just doing something because I think a lot of people, like early on in AI, it's like, what are you doing with my information? And I can
yes.
say, there's an amazingly high bar in building an AI product, at GitHub where like, are we building responsible AI? Is the feedback that we're giving, are we protecting users? Are we protecting their data? Are we being good stewards? And we've been exercising that all along the way. Um, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of where that config command came from, where like users have the option to opt into something. I forgot.
Yeah. So, for example, like one thing that really helps us, troubleshooting what's going on or detecting problems is like, do we send uh, do you want to opt into sending us like completely anonymized usage information? So, I think in the GitHub CLI, we always want to give users a choice. Like when we build features, whether it's like, do you want to send us like telemetry? Do you want to see color? Like
Mm,
giving users choices. Um, yeah.
nice. Well, I think I like that, because a lot of I noticed like a lot of AI products it's a lot of like assumptions on what I want them to do with my data, and I'm just like uninstall. Like I'm not even going to use this anymore because I never gave you permission to do the things that you're doing with my information. So I think I love GitHub's approach and GitHub CLI's team's approach of like we're just going to wait for the users to tell us what they want, and then we're going to give them the option to opt in and out of that particular feature. And taking it slow and steady is definitely good. We just GA'd in March, and I know there's been a lot of amazing feedback coming in from the community, and we have to synthesize the feedback, analyze it, and then implement something to go. But yeah, definitely love the CLI and the GitHub Copilot CLI. It's good. It's good, and it's definitely a work in progress. Cool. So as we get ready to wrap up, thanks for the amazing examples and the amazing demos. I definitely learned a lot, and I'm for sure going to be using that PR command alias thing. I'm going to go back and like screenshot it so I can create my own local alias, because oftentimes I miss notifications. I'm not even lying. I missed the notification. Somebody's waiting for me to do something. Somebody left a comment for me to address. I don't see it. Wait, are we able to pull in comments as well that mentions us through the CLI?
I'm pretty sure, Andy, you'd be best said. But on the notification front, there is an extension written by a hubber. I think it's called GH0. I don't know if it's fully ready yet. Maybe I shouldn't call them out on this, but there is an extension for managing notifications as well.
Uh,
What?
if you want, Will, since you have your terminal up, if you type GH status, we also, if you kind of want like a quick overview, like we do have like this where, like as you have activity in various repositories, it will show things that you're kind of watching. But this definitely, I guess, could be, like an area improvement of like, hey, show me notifications that I'm being mentioned explicitly, maybe. Yeah.
Yes, listen, the notifications, the PR honestly is a start. I will start there. It's better than what I'm doing currently, which is nothing. So thank you for that nice tidbit, William. But as we get ready to wrap up, I have one final question for you. What would you say are there any like opportunities for the community to get more involved with the GitHub CLI? I know it's a very active community, a very opinionated community, but are there any additional opportunities? And also, like, I know that the GitHub Copilot CLI team has an open source repo with like documentation and like some issues. How does the community fit there as well? Again, lots of questions.
Shall I run with this, Andy, or do you want to?
Go for it.
Okay, yeah, sure. Okay, yes, there is an active repository. I mean, we've got CLI here, and you can see that there are a growing number of issues for our CRDMS, but we absolutely love when community members come in and they let us know how they're using the CLI, because we have, as Andy called out about the analytics, we have very limited visibility into how people are using it. And so people coming in and saying, I'm using the CLI for this thing, and this is the value it provides me, and this is where I'm missing value, is incredible for us. That's so, be so grateful when people come and they will let us know their use cases and what we can do to make things better. So please, if people are, that you install the CLI or you're already using the CLI and you run into some issue, something that's missing, please come by, drop an issue. All right. And then, Andy, go on, jump in there.
Yeah, and I guess also would say, we certainly would love to hear, like, for people who are interested in contributing outside of like looking at our issues, looking for those that are labeled as like need help. But I think something we would definitely love, like feedback from either people interested in contributing or just like feedback from a product usage perspective is, open up discussions. Certainly would love to see, would people be interested in something like office hours or like, something like on a monthly basis where we just kind of meet, discuss like the things that we're seeing and maybe see if there's people who are interested in contributing to something a little bit more significant and wanted to collaborate. So definitely having discussions open is kind of a great way to reach out.
If you're interested in office hours,
Nice.
Put something in the chat. Let us know, because we've been talking about it. And if someone gives us a nudge, then it might just push us into doing it.
Nice. I love that. Well, anything else you want to say? If not, thank you so much for being here. I personally learned a lot. I hope you learned a lot.
Yeah, I mean, what I want to say is, thanks for watching. My call to action is go and install it, run GH, see all the things that are available in the CLI, because there's a lot that we didn't cover right now. A lot of commands, a lot of configuration, a lot of ways to make it your own experience. And yeah, let us know.
Yeah, love the show. Thank you for having us. I would say for everybody out there, if you're interested in looking at CLI extensions, there is a GH extension topic. You can just search on in the web, or you can run the GH extension search command and just kind of see like these experiences that people are building. And if it's something that you're interested in building your own extension, we would love to hear from you and how we can make that experience as easy as possible. So thank you.
Nice. And I do believe there's also an extensions topic on GitHub that you can go to and see a lot more extensions on .com, on the .com platform. But thank you, Andy. Thank you, William, for being here today and chatting all about the GitHub CLI. I learned so much, even if it's just that one command. I promise I am going to do it as soon as possible. Thanks for being here. Love the CLI. Love the work you're doing. Thank you all for joining us, and until next time, bye.
Bye.